Okay, well, thank you very much. I haven't been to one of these events before, so I hope I start it off in the right way. Just picking up on what Leon said about training wheels on the bicycle. This is an analogy we seem to use quite a lot in Kosovo, and I also recall it being used in Bosnia-Herzegovina. I mean, you may say, have we taken off the training wheels too early by this insistence by the international community that we are not going to intervene with the post-electoral political problems of Kosovo? Perhaps, though, you could put it the other way. Did we leave the training wheels on too long? After all, Kosovo became independent in 2008. And perhaps some of the it's anyway a question for discussion. Perhaps there was too much interference in the immediate aftermath of independence. Kosovo should have been left to itself to sort out its political problems at an earlier stage. If I may draw an analogy with Bosnia-Herzegovina, where I was ambassador from 2001 to 2005, and we have many similarities and many differences between the role of the international community in Bosnia and the role of the international community here. But I do recall that when I went to Bosnia in 2001, there was an alliance for change in office, at least, perhaps not in power, with a very disparate group of parties who had been put together by the international community. And people kept saying this was a Frankenstein monster government. It wasn't a real government that reflected the structures in Bosnia at the time. And when it got voted out of office in the general election, all sorts of people said it was totally unreasonable of the international community to accept the former nationalist parties coming back, even though they had a majority in Parliament. And I think here, we have a particular situation. I think part of the problem is that in Kosovo, people have not got very used to the idea that parliaments operate by numbers, and I think all our countries have had examples where the largest single party has not been in government. I mean, it was rather a long time ago in the UK. It was 1924 when the first Labour government was formed, when in fact Labour came third in the elections. But I think that is part of the problem that you face today. But in the end, I think that the time has come for the politicians to move forward. I think there's a general view across the international community in the EU that the elections in June 2014 were the best elections that Kosovo has ever had. So I think it would be a great pity for Kosovo as a state if the message that went from those elections was that we just go into more elections. And all the politicians of all parties say to me, if we go into new elections, they will be much more bitter, they won't be as good, people will be fighting for their lives, they will engage in all those bad things they've engaged in the past. So I think that the Kosovo politicians need to work with this parliamentary arithmetic that they've got to try and find a way forward. I had my Balkans director here last week, and it was quite interesting that nearly all the party political leaders said, we understand why the international community is saying that this time you've got to solve this problem, and we accept that, and we have moved beyond the point of declaring independence, we've moved beyond the stage of supervised independence. But maybe you could just give us a bit of informal advice, and here I see this phrase coming up. I mean, actually, we can give you some very formal advice, because I think if Kosovo is to move down its EU path, and the next stage is signature of the Stabilisation and Association Agreement, I think all the politicians here need to think about how the political stasis, if you like, the political logjam here looks to people in Brussels, particularly the people who don't come from countries like the Netherlands and the UK, or dare I say Germany, or the EU, so you're not a country. You know, you've got to think about how it looks to countries that are not as well disposed towards Kosovo as perhaps the three national states sort of represented here are. And there will be a tendency for them to say, this shows that Kosovo is not a real state, it can't solve its political problems, and therefore we should hold off signing the SAA. Of course, some of the non-recognisers have their own legal reasons for not wanting to sign the SAA. They will also say, but of course we shouldn't hold up Serbia's path, because Serbia cannot be held responsible for the problems of the Kosovo politicians. And so there will be an unfortunate divergence of the paths of Serbia on the one hand and Kosovo on the other as they move towards the EU. I mean, we're not in favour of strict parallelism. In fact, we've stood out against it. But I think there's a danger that in this situation we could get Kosovo going onto an even slower track and Serbia moving forward on its present track, and I don't think that would be good for Kosovo. So that is a formal message, I think, which has come from certainly from my Balkans director when he was here, and I think it's something Mr. Zbogar has indicated, and I think it's something you do need to think about. So I think, you know, our informal advice is simply that the Kosovo politicians need to work with one another. Perhaps they ought to sit around in a few cafes, as you've described it, in a rather more friendly way, and find a solution. Of course, there are two problems. There's the problem of the speaker, which is the current difficulty, and then once we've resolved that, there's the question of formation of the government, which may actually be a little bit easier. We'll see. Anyway, I think I've probably almost reached your 10 minutes, so I'll stop talking.